Hello again, Steve here, and today I wanted to share a few thoughts about the transgender movement in general, and specifically where I think it's headed. Now, first of all, I'm not going to delve much into the morality of, or maybe not at all, into the morality of what this is, though that is a great discussion, and I know lots of people have had it. There's lots of information out there, and of course, it might be a good discussion for a future date. But mostly, I'm going to talk about it in terms of trends that happen within our within the human community, if you will, and specifically about pendulums and how things swing from one maybe moral outrage or just tendency to another and back and forth kind of thing. Now, you know, there could be many reasons why this has come about. I would think that if you were my guess is, I'm no shrink or psych expert, psychological expert here, but I would suspect that if you look into the childhood of most people who go into this transsexual state or whatever it is, state of mind, if you were to look at their childhood, you would find a childhood which is not very desirable, to put it mildly. So there could be an element of them, of people who go into this, who are seeking some sort of attention. But also, there's the other aspect, which is that the left in general, especially now, they are trying to make a victim culture of and of outrage for as many categories as people as they can, because their whole strategy is divide and conquer, right? Rather than looking at what we have in terms of similarities, they want to look at, what we have in terms of differences. So that's there as well. But my thinking on the transgender movement is that the left has gone too far in the pushing of this to the forefront. And let me just explain where I'm coming from in there. Pendulums, okay, pendulums, cycles happen throughout the world, right? In nature, they happen. Spring becomes summer, summer becomes fall, and did I say? Yeah, okay. Sometimes it's early morning. I gotta think. Sometimes I'll say things backwards. And day becomes night, and what have you. You look at a lot of this is exaggerated by human agitation because they want it to be such. You look at even economic cycles. A lot of that is extenuated and exaggerated by government intervention. But nevertheless, there are fads. People get on a craze. They go to this bar for a while, and there's a lineup at it, and the rest of the bars have no lineups. And then a while later, because people like something over here, they all end up over there. There's this herd mentality, right? So, and people are, a certain religion is popular, so everybody herds onto that, and now the religion is leftism, so everybody's crowding onto that, and whatever the high priests of that particular religion say, everybody goes for. So that's part of it as well, of course. Now, if you look at, but the thing is that if we're objective, if we put on our critical thinking, and this is going to be part of the moral of this, if there is moral at all, to this little conversation, is hopefully an encouragement for us to critically think on these things. But some people are surprised because I don't do a lot of predictions. I do them more privately, but I have in the past made predictions which were, people are kind of shocked at how I could come up with them. I remember when oil was at $150 a barrel. A family member of mine who's a senior executive in an oil company, I remember telling him, I said, well, in a few years it'll be $60 again. And he thought I was completely out of my mind because he believed very strongly in peak oil, which to me I think is nonsense, complete nonsense in terms of a practical level. At least in any of our lives, and in our lives and in the lives of our kids, it's just a pipe dream. It's a scare tactic, which is another one of these things that goes on. There's always people pushing scare tactics, doom and gloom. It's always been for thousands of years. There's a lot of profit in doom and gloom. Anyway, I told him that it'd be in a few years, and he just thought I was out of my mind. Turns out it went to 30, and later on he asked me, he says, "How did you know that?" I said, "Well, I didn't know it. I said, but just look at history. Look at pendulums. Look at how things swing, right? I remember back in 2014, I was talking to a gold investor, a guy who, yeah, I mean, this guy knows his stuff. I mean, this guy's an investor and stuff like that, and we were sitting down talking together, and I told him, he asked me, he said, what do you think is the next best investment? I said, I think it's the U.S. dollar and U.S. securities, U.S. equities rather. He thought it because this was in the depths of the Obama regime, right? He kind of thought I was out of my mind. And you got to think that was the time when Canadian dollar was at parity with the U.S. well before Trump was elected. And he asked me, he said, well, why would you think that? I said, because what is there that's more recognized as value in the world but the U.S. But the U.S. What is stronger? Yes, it has its problems, but the reason why I say it's a good investment right now is because everybody thinks it's completely shit. You know, that's the contrarian viewpoint. But fundamentally, yes, it's in really rough shape, but it's comparably better than everybody else. So so when everything else stinks like shit and you just stink a little bit less, well, you smell like roses basically. I predicted the Trump election right from the time he announced his candidacy, and people thought I was completely crazy. And why? Well, first there was a couple of reasons. I said, well, if we have this pendulum of leftism to right, leftism to more centrist or right thinking, we had Obama. We had the disaster of 100,000 bombs Obama for 8 years, and $10 trillion in debt and all this sort of stuff. Complete disaster. So and also the Democrats had this shoe-in of this terrible individual, Hillary Clinton. That was who they were running, and the Republicans, against their wishes, were going to run this guy, Trump, or Trump announced, and it was all. I mean, Trump is, first of all, most people didn't realize that his foundation is the power of positive thinking, Norman Vincent Peale. Secondly, he wrote The Art of the Deal, which is one of the most recognized negotiating books in the history of humanity. And the guy is a masterful brander, etc., etc., etc. And I remember saying to people, if you don't think this guy is for real and that he has a serious chance of winning, you haven't studied him. Like, you can be biased about him, you can hate him and all that sort of stuff, but if you think that he's a complete dummy, you're not fooling anybody. Maybe yourself, but nobody else. Anyways, cell phones. I remember predicting that cell phones were going to start getting bigger. I'm old enough to remember when cell phones were as big as a brick. You had to carry them with like a harness on you. I remember when they were in cars, they were called car phones. Anyway, they started out massive because the battery technology was such and whatever, right? And then they got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where I had one that was about this big and it had a little flip on it, right? But I remember saying at a certain point, they're not going to get any smaller. I mean, yes, technology can get smaller. You could make a cell phone like this big. But the problem is the interface with fingers, because that's where we were at still. So what happened? Cell phones started getting bigger and bigger and bigger again to the point where I've got this massive clunking thing. It's like I can't even carry it in my pocket hardly anymore. Whereas, 10 years ago, I had a nice slim one. So that's like a pendulum, right? Kept trending one way, smaller, 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 stopped, and it had to start getting bigger. Another one is pollution control on trucks, right? This whole green movement. Trucks were getting better and better and better and better, and more fuel efficient, until all the pollution stuff caught up on it. And now they have more problems, burn more fuel. And what are people doing? What are truck companies doing? They're keeping their old trucks. They're rebuilding. There's an industry now where pre-06, I think it is, trucks are being remanufactured basically as brand new trucks. Why? Because they're way frickin' better than the modern stuff. So that's a pendulum. And it wasn't in this, and a lot of times these pendulums, once again, just like cycles in the economy, they're driven by manipulation, which is what I would say what is happening in coming back to the trans movement as well. That's what's happening. is it's being driven by manipulation. Sure, there's a number of dudes out there who want to be girls. Probably always has been. But it's being foisted upon everybody else by a new religion in a way. Just like pollution controls and all of the socialism and stuff is being foisted upon everybody by a religion. It's a religion of leftism. And but I'll tell you something. I think, and I had this sense, predicted it to people close to me and so on, that the trans movement is the end of this stuff. It's like the left will push and push and push and push more outrageous, for conservative mindsets, more outrageous propositions into society until society is eventually going to say, okay, that's enough. And you see this happening. And the reason I said months ago that this trans movement is the end of it is because women won't tolerate it, right? Men get discounted by the society. Men's opinions, oh, you're just men. Men are disposable, right? Men were the ones they used to send off to wars, put in ditches, and so on. But you ignore the will of women, and all of a sudden things start to get backtracked. And the reason I said women wouldn't put up with it was for several reasons. One is, and this is being stated now, is you can have a trans whatever, believes he's a woman. Now he goes into little girls' washrooms. Well, how happy are mothers going to be about that? How happy are the women going to be about that? Because there's going to be a certain number of women, and I'm going to say, it might not state it, but there'll be a lot of them who are going to say, no, I'm not buying this. That's a dude in my washroom, right? And as soon as a couple of perverted things start going on, okay, the media will hush it, but they'll only hush it so long, until there's enough women who are outraged, they will side with the women because they have to. Society has to side with women. We're geared for that. We're there. Society is geared to protect women so we can protect children. There's more women than there are men. They outvote men and so on. And what's interesting here, what's really interesting, this is something I didn't predict, is the lesbian groups who are going after the trans now. And it's a cat fight. So that's very interesting, because now who's the more protected class, right? Lesbians used to be held up by the left as, oh, these are, very progressive and so on. And now they don't like trans people. They don't like trans women. Like it's absolutely, if it wasn't real, it would actually be funny. But this is serious stuff. The other reason why women, where this is going to happen, and I predicted it, and it's already started to happen, is you get some dude who claims to be a woman. Now he wants to compete in the Olympics for the women's team. Now, the society wants to say that we're all equal, everybody's the same, and so on and so on. But yet, there's never going to be a, co-ed, there's never going to be women speed racing against guys in the Olympics. Not going to happen. Why? Because reality. Because biology, right? But if a dude who's claiming to be a woman wants to run with the women are going to say, no, no, no. You ain't no woman. You ain't no woman. And this is what's going to end it. It's just, reality is going to end it, right? And women are going to be the cold, hard, snarling stare of reality at this. And it's not going to continue. It'll continue on a kind of a fringe. It'll go underground or whatever. But it won't become mainstream. It won't become mainstream. It's not the same. See, they say LGBT whatever, right? Well, the trans, lesbian, that's, nobody could argue with that. I mean, you could argue with the morality of it. But the lesbian is not claiming to be a man, right? The lesbian is just saying, I'm a woman who likes women sexually. The gay, LG, yeah, the gay is the gay guy, the homosexual guy, is not claiming to be a woman. I'm a man who likes men, right? That's, I mean, we might say, well, they might just be faking it, but we can't say that that's not possible, right? And the bisexual, that's somebody who's man or a woman who likes men and women. I mean, maybe they do. Like, we can't really argue with that. But somebody and then you lump trans in there. Trans is a guy or a woman biologically who's saying that they are a woman or a man, and they want to be recognized as such, and they want to be then go into, so the men especially, and this is where it'll stop, the men then want access to women's safe spaces. They want to be able to go into women's washrooms. They want to be able to go into women's only stuff like Olympics and sports and stuff like that. And women, and that goes against biology, right? That goes against biology. That's an impossibility. It's like saying, and furthermore, the the regulation that's coming down that says you have to. It's like saying, here's a dandelion, but this we're going to tell you, we're going to enforce on you to say that that dandelion is now, I don't know, a spruce tree. Well, no, it's not. It is not biologically. And a man is not a woman. I mean, I don't know why we have to state this so clearly, but it is so obvious when we go into, when we weird things out so much that we go against reality, and then that going against reality affects the safety of the majority, and the majority being women. Society is such, and it's still geared that way, that if we threaten the safety of women, it's over. That's the end of that pendulum. And I predict this is the end of it. When women start fighting back against the movement of the trans movement, it's done. It's not that the trans movement is done. There'll always going to be some trans people are going to go underground, sure. But in terms of the societal and the legal recognition of it, like, it's not going to happen for long if there's going to be an Olympics that you're going to have men competing in women's groups in sports. And when I say men, I mean, I include men who claim to be women and who are taking all kinds of drugs to pretend that they're women. Do a blood test of them, right? That's the check, right? Do a blood test of that individual, send it to 50 labs, and say, is this a woman or is this a man? They're going to say it's a man. Of course they are, because that's the DNA. You can't change it. So anyway, that's, once again, it's not a moral thing here, but it's not. I'm not saying whether it's moral or not moral or whatever. But let's have a moral of the story. The moral of the story is that let's not let our most human trait be trampled on by the outrage mobs who will come after us and say, because the new god of the city says that you have to recognize people because of what they said, don't let that squash our rational thinking ability, right? This is about rational thinking. And the highest human tendency or ability is rational thinking. I mean, every animal, lots of animals and so on, have emotions, and they can see and they can sense and all this sort of stuff. But we're the ones who can rationally think. And if we're asked to suppress our rational thinking ability, we're being asked to become less human. Let's not become less human. And this is not dehumanizing. This is not being bigoted and so on. It's being honest. It's being honest. And when we're being honest and we're dealing with reality, we're not being bigoted. To suspend reality and say something is what it isn't, that's where the tendency of bigotry comes from. But not being honest. I mean, not because we're being honest, I mean. Anyway, so let's be honest. Let's be human. Let's exercise the highest nature of what we are, which are rational thinkers. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and share, and comment in the box below. Bye for now.